And we're kicking off the list today with the haunting of the Ammons family. There was a lot going on with this case. It's similar to some of the stuff Ed and Lorraine dealt with, but it would have terrified them for sure. This whole situation played out back in 2011, and it became one of the most well-documented possession/haunting cases in recent years. Latoya Ammons and her family moved into a rental house in Gary, Indiana, where they soon began experiencing terrifying and inexplicable paranormal events. The family reported hearing footsteps, creaking floors, and voices, especially during the night when the house was quiet. That's your more standard spooky haunted house stuff, but even crazier, the young ones allegedly started levitating, floating above their beds or being thrown across the room by some unseen force. Latoya and her children also began displaying signs of possession. They were speaking in deep voices, growling, and demonstrating unnatural strength and aggression. The house was also infested with flies, even during the winter months. Several witnesses, healthcare professionals, social workers, and even police officers who filed official reports stating that they had witnessed unusual and unexplained phenomena in the house. So it doesn't seem like this was just the family spouting stuff off. Number 9, the Kamuki House. This is said to be one of the most haunted houses in Hawaii. In 1941, police responded to a frantic phone call from a woman screaming about her family being attacked. Authorities rushed to the scene, and when they got there, they reported seeing a young boy, his 3 sisters, and their mother, who made the phone call, being tossed around by a seemingly invisible force. A similar horrific incident would happen in the home 30 years later, which police would also report on. Luckily, the home has since been torn down. Condos sit on the property now. As to what was responsible for these odd cases, local legend has it that there was a vengeful corpse that had been buried on the property. Next up, we have the S.K. Pierce Mansion. The house was built in 1875 by Sylvester Knowlton Pierce, a wealthy chair manufacturer. It changed ownership multiple times, but everyone who lived there seemed to have a real lousy time. The home served various purposes. At one point, it was a boarding house, hotel, a restaurant, and during all this time, as ownership changed hands and people moved in and out, some residents never left. The ghosts. In 1965, the home was owned by Ennio Sari, a World War II vet who met his end after being burned alive in his bedroom. The cause of the fire? Not 100% certain. His bed just seemed to mysteriously catch fire. People who would visit that same room later on would often describe the faint smell of something burning. A couple by the name of Edwin Gonzalez and Lillian Otero moved into the home in 2009, and they were only able to stay in the place for 2 years. They had a list of creepy experiences, but it was actually their neighbors who would tell them about this next thing. The folks next door would look out their window on occasion and see a little blonde-haired boy running through the couple's house. Edwin and Lillian didn't have kids. The couple would also report seeing a woman believed to be Mrs. Pierce and a young child, possibly her daughter. They'd also hear unexplained voices and whispers and conversations in seemingly empty rooms.
At number 7, Cindy McBain, just your typical teenager, stumbles upon an old beat-up Ouija board in a peculiar shop. $5 later, and she's got a ticket to the unknown. As she and her friend Nancy dabble with the board, with unearthly clawing noises from within their bedroom walls. Nancy bolts out of there, but Cindy decides to push further, and that's when things go awry. She begins to change, and not in a good way. Her appetite disappears, she starts looking like a ghost herself. Even her parents and teachers are getting worried, hearing eerie voices and noticing her deteriorating condition. When her mom tries to snatch that Ouija board away, Cindy's grip becomes stronger than you'd expect from a little person, and she transforms into an entirely different person. Violence erupts, with her dad becoming a victim of her aggression, and that's when the Warrens get the call. Fast forward to Sydney's hospital room, where Father Emili makes a shocking discovery. Sydney goes berserk at the sight of a crucifix. So an 18-hour exorcism unfolds, concluding in a terrifying tale of demonic possession the Warrens kept tucked away. If this one doesn't give you goosebumps, I don't know what will. At number 6 is the Wax Man. Now the Wax Man, as they call him, is a figure shrouded in mystery right out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Every night, like clockwork at 11:30 p.m., he steps out of his house and embarks on a peculiar journey to a junkyard. Now, why the nickname Waxman, you ask? It's because of his face, or at least what people catch a glimpse of, which seems eerily waxy. But here's where it gets even spookier. See, people stake out his streak, and when he sets off, they start tailing him. What's even more bizarre is the Waxman's supposed mastery of timing the traffic lights. Why, you might wonder? Well, to give slip to those intrepid followers, of course. He's well aware when someone's on his tail, and he's not too shy about throwing them off his scent. He'll play with his speed, darting ahead or slowing down abruptly just to mess with his followers. And if you're daring enough to pull up alongside him, you might get a fleeting glance or maybe even a wave, but don't hold your breath for that. Now, there's one eerie story of a carload of students who tailed the Waxman all the way to that junkyard. And guess what? They never spoke about what they witnessed there. Let's not make a habit of tailing mysterious folks in their cars, especially a guy like Waxman. Seriously, it's just like asking for trouble. And number 5 is the Amityville Horror hoax. The Amityville Horror, a chilling case linked to the Warrens, became a sensation before the Conjuring franchise. The Lutz family alleged finding a demonic footprint in the snow, but weather records don't back that up. No snowfall then. The book and film mention police involvement, but records beg to differ. You see, to make things even murkier, Reynold Defoe's attorney, William Weber, suggested it was all a colossal hoax. He claimed the Lutz family, writer Jay Anson, and the Warrens concocted the story. It's not the first time the Warrens appear more interested in a captivating narrative than cold, hard facts. The case of the haunting in Connecticut, penned as non-fiction, had a writer hired by them, and he struggled with conflicting accounts. Questioned Ed Warren, their response was unsettling. They're crazy. All the people who come to us are crazy. Just use what you can and make the rest up. It's a bizarre twist of the tale that still haunts us to this day. At number 4 is the South End Werewolf. A tale from the paranormal files of Ed and Lorraine Warren stands as one of their most peculiar cases. Imagine, if you will, a carpenter named William Ramsay living in Essex, England, who believed he cursed with lycanthropy, not the Hollywood-style transformation under the full moon, but the seemingly random shift into a beast. Ramsay described his first transformation as a youth, a nightmarish experience of icy chills, primal urges, and an overpowering odor. He transformed into a werewolf-like creature, threatening a fence post and gnawing at wire mesh. For years, he dismissed it as an isolated incident, but in 1983, the wolf reared its snarling head again at a pub, leading to a wild cab ride home. In 1989, the Warrens intervened, inviting Ramsay to Connecticut for an exorcism. He was initially skeptical, despite believing in becoming a werewolf. The exorcism, a night of violent thrashing, supposedly purged the werewolf from his soul, bringing him peace. A silver bullet might be Hollywood's way, but it seems that for Ed and Lorraine Warren, exorcism was the remedy of choice for this strange case. At number 3, the Shadow Doll is next level terrifying. You've all seen Chucky, right? Well, this doll makes Chucky look like a birthday party guest. It's a horrifying sight. A woman with a white face, swathed in black robes, adorned with chains and spikes, even sporting a human tooth. It's not out for your physical body, it's after your dreams. When you hit the hay, this grotesque creature invades your slumber. It doesn't just give you a quick stare. Oh no, it's sadistic. It haunts your dreams relentlessly, returning again and again, pushing you to the brink of sheer terror until your heart says, "I'm out!" and you never wake up again. Imagine being so afraid to sleep, knowing that the moment you close your eyes, the Shadow Doll could strike, and it might be your last night. The Warrens have locked it up, but honestly, it's too dangerous. Burn it and be done with it. At number 2, let's dive into the spooky world of the Winchester Mystery House, a place so mysterious that even renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren kept their distance. The story begins in '86 when Sarah Winchester, a wealthy widow, headed to California to escape her troubled past. You see, she inherited a vast fortune from the Winchester rifle empire, but it came with a dark legacy. After losing her family inheriting a fortune from the Winchester rifle, she embarked on a lifelong quest to build a house that never seemed to be finished building. Its twisted hallways, doors leading to nowhere, and staircases to the ceiling give us an architectural puzzle. But why did Sarah Winchester create such a bizarre mansion? Rumors suggest she built it to appease the vengeful spirits of those eliminated by the Winchester rifle. Ed and Lorraine Warren, known for delving into some seriously scary stuff, never ventured to this peculiar place. Imagine that. A mansion designed to appease the restless dead, and the Warrens wanted nothing to do with it. At number 1 is the Brick. Inside the Warrens Museum, nestled among the spine-chilling artifacts, there lies a seemingly ordinary relic. A brick. Yeah, just your run-of-the-mill building block, or so it seems. But within the context of this occult museum, anything is far from mundane. You see, this brick hails from the infamous Borley Rectory, a place renowned for being the most haunted structure in all of the UK before its fiery demise in 1939. On that fateful night, chaos reigned supreme, with over 2,000 reports of paranormal occurrences, including floating bricks seemingly possessed by poltergeists. This peculiar brick might just be the most terrifying piece of masonry in history. Not that there's an extensive list of terrifying bricks to compare it to, but it stands as a chilling testament to the unexplained and eerie events that have gripped the world, reminding us that even the most ordinary objects can harbor extraordinary.
Number 10. We're starting off strong with the Devil Made Me Do It case. If you're a fan of Ed and Lorraine, you know this one. The Devil Made Me Do It case is arguably one of the most famous cases that Ed and Lorraine ever worked on. But beyond the supernatural, this case was right in the public eye. Not only were there demons and the supernatural, but the scrutiny of the public eye made this a whole different monster for the Warrens. A bunch of people outside of the courthouse making claims and threats over the case isn't easy to deal with. When 19-year-old Arn Cheyenne Johnson took the life of his landlord and blamed it on the devil, Ed and Lorraine jumped to his defense. They were convinced a demon had entered him after he tried to save his brother from a vicious possession a year earlier. His younger brother was possessed by 43 demons, and Arn commanded that they leave him and enter him instead. The Warrens fell under immense scrutiny, but according to them, the court had defended accounts of God in the past. Now it was time to defend accounts of the devil. But one thing remains strange to me. Arn was never exorcised after the event. Does that mean they are still with him? Number 9. Highgate Cemetery. Where were they for the vampire hysteria at Highgate Cemetery? Like, where were you? When I learned about this case, I was flabbergasted, and it's weird to me that they weren't there. They've dealt with werewolves, but missed out on vampires completely? The Highgate Cemetery in London, England has some of the oldest graves in the world, making it the perfect breeding ground for ghosts, ghouls, goblins, and vampires. Ooh, it's spooky season. The Highgate vampire case caused a media uproar in the 60s that culminated in two magicians facing off to see who could catch the vampire first. It all started when two girls reported seeing the dead rise from the graves while walking through Swain Lane one night. Soon, animal carcasses drained of blood started turning up. Newspapers had their cameras ready. A massive vampire hunt was organized on Friday, April 13th, in 1973, and bodies were even exhumed from their graves to see if they were toothy. Sadly, no one caught anything, but the case still sends a tingle down the spines of vampire enthusiasts around the world. Legends of the demon, though, continue, along with sightings of a crazed old woman and corpses appearing in places they shouldn't be. Number 8. The Bell Witch. I searched the internet far and wide to see if the Warrens had ever visited the Bell Farm, but alas, no. If I'm wrong and I missed something, post a link down in the comments because I'm not perfect and maybe I missed it. But as far as I can see, they never actually checked out one of the most famous hauntings in the world. 200 years later, the Bell Cave remains an attraction, and many still report hearing a shrill, scratchy voice when no one is around and see orbs surrounding the farm, or where it used to stand. Though the actual events happened well before the time of the Warrens, and the farm was torn down, the Bell Cave was still there. If there was any duo who could have proven the tale of the Bell Witch, it was them, but maybe, just maybe, they were afraid of what they might find.
And at number 7 is the Lizzie Borden House. The Lizzie Borden House, located in Fall River, Massachusetts, is infamous for the brutal death of Andrew and Abby Borden that occurred there in 1892. On August 4th, 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were found dead in their home. Lizzie Borden, Andrew's daughter, was accused of the attack but was acquitted during her trial. The case remains unsolved, and the true identity of the perp has never been definitively proven. Guests claim to have seen apparitions of Lizzie Borden and her parents throughout the house. Some have reported seeing the figures of a man and woman believed to be Andrew and Abby Borden in different rooms. At number 6, we have the Michael Taylor possession. We've heard of some cases where exorcism supposedly worked, but there are a lot more that failed, or in this case, ended in total tragedy. There's a good chance this man was far beyond anything Ed and Lorraine Warren would have been able to deal with. The Michael Taylor possession case, which occurred in Ossett, England in 1974, is one of the most disturbing exorcism cases in recent years. Michael Taylor was a 31-year-old married man with 5 children. He started experiencing behavioral changes in erratic episodes, exhibiting signs of aggression while claiming to be tormented by evil spirits. He was part of a local Christian group called the Christian Fellowship Group, led by Mary Robinson and her husband, Pastor Ray Robinson. The Robinsons and other members of the Christian Fellowship Group decided to conduct an exorcism on Michael that ended up lasting for an entire night. Taylor displayed violent behavior. He would attack the participants. He would growl, speak in tongues. After the prolonged exorcism sessions, Taylor was declared free of the demonic entities by the group, but shortly after returning home, he ended up taking the life of his wife, Christine, in a frenzied attack. When police arrived at the scene, they found Taylor covered in red, strolling down the street in a completely detached state. Taylor ended up being acquitted on the grounds of insanity and was sent to a psychiatric hospital for treatment, which is what should have happened long before. Number 5, the haunted Elsa doll. Now, the Warrens were no strangers when it came to haunted dolls, but after having dealt with Annabelle, I doubt they'd have wanted any part in this. In 2013, the Madonia family in Houston got an Elsa doll from Frozen for their young daughter. It would sing and say phrases from the movie. Everything was pretty normal for the first 2 years, but according to their mother, Emily Madonia, the doll started to go back and forth between English and Spanish, just out of nowhere. There was no button for it, just completely random. They had the doll all the way up until 2019, and during this whole time they never even had to change the doll's batteries. And the creepiest part, Elsa would occasionally say phrases even when its power was switched off. Family did what anyone would do in this situation. They chucked Elsa in the trash, but weeks later they found her in the basement. They attempted to get rid of the doll again, putting the doll in the trash all the way at the bottom of the bin right before the garbage was collected for the day. Then they left town for a few days, but when they got back, guess who was sitting in their backyard? Elsa had returned yet again. Now, the most logical explanation is that someone was playing a prank. According to the mother, though, the doll was taken away by the garbage men, and the doll in the backyard had a distinctive mark that her daughter had left on it years before, so it seemed to be the same one. I'm not going to accuse the dad, but all I know is I know what I'd do if my family was freaked out by a doll and wanted to get rid of it, so I'd probably have some fun. Anyway, at number 4, we have the Hopkinsville goblin encounter. Goblins, you don't hear about many real-life goblin encounters. Unfortunately, this is just another alien encounter case. La-di-da. Anyway, not sure how goblin became part of the name. In August of 1955 in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, the Sutton and Taylor families witnessed strange lights streaking across the sky. Later that night, they heard odd noises outside of the farmhouse, including scratching, tapping, and footsteps on the roof. The situation took a even more bizarre turn when the families spotted small, silver-skinned beings about 2 to 3 feet tall with large glowing eyes, long arms, and sharp claws. Terrified, they fired at the creatures, but the bullets seemed to have no effect, so the families called the police, who found no evidence of intruders. They ended up going to the police station and recounted their experience. Next up, we have the Bell Witch. The story goes that in rural Tennessee, back between 1817 and 1821, the Bell family, John Bell, his wife Lucy, and their children, came under attack by an unseen aggressive entity. The Bells lived in a settlement called Red River near Adams, Tennessee. The strange occurrences began in 1817 when the family reported hearing unexplained knocking on the walls of their home. And over time, these noises escalated into worse things. Whatever this entity was, it started interacting with the family, speaking to them, and even causing physical harm. It became known as the Bell Witch. Apparently, it had a very distinctive voice, but it could also mimic the voices of other people. John Bell, in particular, suffered physical attacks from the entity. He experienced choking, slapping, pinching, spanking, which contributed to his declining health. One theory is that the Bell Witch was connected to a neighbor named Kate Batts. She was involved in a property dispute with the Bell family and was thought to be responsible for the supernatural events. John's health deteriorated rapidly, and eventually he passed away in 1820. The Bell Witch was said to have taken credit for his death, claiming to have poisoned him. After John's death, things eventually died down. No pun intended. At number 2, we have the Germana Cell possession. Clara Germana Cell was a 16-year-old South African girl attending a Roman Catholic mission school. In 1906, she started exhibiting disturbing behavior. She would speak in languages she had seemingly never learned: Polish, German, and French. She would also show aversion to sacred objects and symbols. Witnesses reported that Clara exhibited superhuman strength during her episodes, overpowering multiple people trying to restrain her. Clara reacted violently to religious symbols, crosses, holy water, prayers, leading many to believe that she had been possessed by some sort of dark force. The local Catholic priest, Father Erasmus Horner, was called to investigate Clara's condition. After witnessing her behavior and conducting interviews, he became convinced that Clara was possessed by a malevolent entity. Several exorcism attempts were made on Clara. The exorcisms were performed by Father Erasmus Horner and a team of priests. After this series of exorcisms, first few didn't really take, Clara was reported to have finally been freed from this demonic possession, and she apparently returned to a normal state with no memory of the events that had transpired during her possession. Finally, though, we have Huska Castle. This place is said to be a full-on gateway to hell. Forget about ghosts murmuring in the night or slamming doors. Here there are said to be full-on winged demonic monsters lurking in the shadows. In the Czech countryside sits Huska Castle. It was built in the second half of the 13th century, sitting over an incredibly deep pit in the ground. The strange thing about the castle is that it sits in the middle of nowhere. There's no water source nearby, no trade route. It wasn't built in any strategically advantageous place. So what was this castle built for? Well, it all has to do with the giant hole it sits on top of, a hole that is said to be a gateway to hell. Before Huska Castle was erected, locals would report strange phenomena surrounding the pit. Winged monsters were said to fly forth from its depths, and it was so deep that nobody could see the bottom. You'd have to be lowered down to see what was in there, and one story goes that a man did volunteer to check things out, and whatever he saw turned his hair gray and made him lose his mind. So Huska Castle was built, fortress built, not to keep invaders out, but to keep demonic forces in. The place is so notorious that back in World War II, members of the SS were said to perform dark rituals at the castle, which sounds like pure fiction until you read about how into the occult they actually were, so that's not that surprising.
Starting off this countdown, we have The Shadow. This video was uploaded to the YouTube channel Happy Fox Productions. According to them, they were on vacation and left their 2 cats at home. When they arrived back home, their cats were very on edge, so they decided to check the security cameras to see what had happened when they were gone. As you can see, there was some sort of shadow moving around outside of the room. A couple of seconds later, the table by the camera shakes, and the other cat enters the room. The door then closes behind it by itself, and the camera moves completely. The poor cat must have been terrified. Also, I've never seen a cat sit up like that before, so clearly something was spooking it. When the owners got home and saw the footage, they were horrified. Moving on at number 9, 9, we have the Wem Town Hall ghost. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you give it a big thumbs up. Also, for you guys that love scary content, I'm also on the channel Top 10 Central Dark, so go ahead and check that out if you want to see me reacting to some very spooky content. Go check it out. On November 19th, 1995, Wem Town Hall in England caught on fire. The whole building burst into flames, and all that was left was rubble. Well, on that night, a man named Tony O'Reilly decided to take some photos of the burning building. In one of the photos, he captured an image of a young girl. This is believed to be the ghost of a girl named Jane Churm. In 1677, Jane died in a fire in the town, so it's pretty creepy that she made a reappearance during the night of the fire. In our 8th spot, we have Robert A. Ferguson. Robert A. Ferguson is a well-known author and apparently ghost attractor. So in 1968, Ferguson was at a conference speaking about the new book he had wrote. While presenting, a lot of people took his photo. Upon reviewing it back, there appears to be a ghostly man standing directly behind him. When the photo was taken, no one was up there except for Ferguson. When he saw the photo, he was shocked. He claims that the ghost is of his late brother that died in World War II, which is creepy but also sweet, like he was by his side during his presentation looking after him.
Number 7, the Snedeker House. It's important to note that the Snedeker House used to be a former funeral home, so of course it was haunted. The Warrens arrived at the house in 1986 to conduct their investigation. While there, the couple proclaimed that the house was infested with demons. The story begins with Carmen and Alan Snedeker, their 3 sons, their daughter, and 2 nieces moving into a home in Southington, Connecticut. Strange happenings of the house started off fairly innocent, with the mother noticing items around the house going missing. Then the children started talking about seeing strange people in their home, more specifically a man with long black hair. Then the eldest son had a drastic personality change that included violent outbursts. He attacked family members out of nowhere and didn't seem like himself. Now, doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia, but the family was not convinced. They believed that his strange and terrifying behavior was the result of the environment and the ghost in the home. Ed and Lorraine spent weeks in the home to get the full demonic experience, and after their investigation, they declared that the morticians that had worked in the home when it was a funeral parlor practiced necromancy and had infused the home with a deep evil. The Warrens performed an exorcism on the home to rid of the evil and make it safe for the family to return. Number 6, the demonic werewolf. This account is based on a story of Bill Ramsey, a real werewolf in London. Bill first demonstrated demonically possessed behavior at the age of 9. Apparently, he displayed superhuman strength, even managing to rip out a post from its concrete dwellings. He would also try to bite at his family and relatives before having seizures. In 1983, now a grown man, he admitted himself to an institution after the cravings for blood returned, but when in the hospital, he attacked a nurse and barked like a dog. In 1987, while displaying a wolfish demeanor, he attacked a police officer with superhuman force. It took 6 more officers altogether to restrain the beast. Now, the fiasco led to a mass news coverage, and the Warrens were on point to wrestle the raging mongrel from his wicked soul. After being flown to Connecticut, the wolf demon was exorcised successfully, and Bill has had no issues ever since. Number 5, the Smurl Haunting. The Smurl Haunting is named after Jack and Janet Smurl. They claim that a demon was haunting their home in West Pittenson, Pennsylvania between the years of 1974 and 1989. The demon was alleged to have thrown the family dog into a wall and pushed their daughter down the stairs. The Warrens arrived at the Smurl household in 1986 to conduct their own investigation. Ed described the demonic presence as very powerful and claimed that the entity was able to shake mirrors and move furniture. He claimed to have recorded audio footage of the knocking and rapping sounds caused by the demon as well. Number 4, the Borley Church. The Borley Church is a haunted place of worship that was built in the 12th century and is located in Essex. Crafted during the Norman conquest of 1066, Borley's church is just steps away from fellow paranormal hotspot Borley Rectory and has been the subject of numerous reports, including eerie footsteps, unsettling smells, and spine-tingling apparitions, most notably a solemn nun aimlessly wandering the courtyard. Now, others reported apparitions included a veiled young lady who walks the churchyard grounds before suddenly disappearing, as well as a monk hiding within the church. The organ is said to play by itself, and paranormal investigators claim to have heard ominous, mournful cries and groans coming from the building. Ed himself declared that he had caught an image of the spirit of the monk looking around a book in the church on camera. Number 3. Amityville. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. Then in December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and exclaimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said that she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it, and all this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying in the house for 28 days. Due to this, Ed and Lorraine visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught a photo of a ghost boy. Now, the picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Now, believers of the haunting think this is the photo of the ghost of the youngest DeFeo son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time of the deaths. The Warrens have suggested that the house is occupied by a malevolent spirit due to its history and tried their best to cast them out. Number 2. Cindy McBain. One day, on one of the 15-year-old's many trips to the mall, Cindy McBain found a new shop called the Antique Attic. Wandering around, she was excited to find a battered old Ouija board for sale, which she bought for $5. After getting the board home, Cindy tried it out with her friend Nancy, and during the first session, the girls heard clawing coming from within Cindy's bedroom walls, which they described as sounding like something trying to be set free. The incident resulted in Nancy running from the house, but Cindy continued to experiment with the Ouija board. Soon after, her friends started to notice a big change in Cindy as she had lost her normally big appetite and she had become gaunt and dull-eyed. Even her teachers became concerned, as did her parents, who on several occasions heard strange voices coming from Cindy's bedroom. When her mother discovered the Ouija board and tried to take it, Cindy became aggressive and grasped her arm with a strong hand, and she later reported feeling afraid of her own daughter. As things escalated, the clawing sound was heard throughout the whole house. Cindy quit school and became a virtual stranger to her family. She eventually became violent, at one point attacking her father and slamming his head into a wall. After this, Cindy was hospitalized and the Warrens were called in. The climax of the case took place at Cindy's hospital bed, and after coming to the conclusion that Cindy was a victim of demonic infestation, the Warrens called in Father Elmy, who noted that Cindy reacted violently to a crucifix. Then, over the next 18 hours, the priest conducted an exorcism. And coming in at number 1 is the Conjuring House. Originally called the Arnold Estate, this house came filled with horrors. In January 1971, the Perrin family, Roger, Carolyn, and their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, moved into a farmhouse. Not long after moving in, the family reportedly experienced all manners of paranormal activity, from apparitions to physical attacks by unseen hands. Now, the most frequent apparition was one of a woman with a broken neck who came to be popularized as Bathsheba Sherman. Now, it turns out that there actually was a real person named Bathsheba Sherman who lived on the Perrins' property in the mid-1800s. She was rumored to be a Satanist, and there was evidence that she had been involved in the death of a neighborhood child, though no trial ever took place. Now, the parents believed that it was Bathsheba's spirit that was tormenting them. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine inserted themselves into the family's alleged experiences, making the case famous via their lectures and eventually the Conjuring film. Now, the Perrin family claimed that paranormal experiences went on for almost 10 years until the family had abandoned the house in 1980. Coming in at number 10, we have Annabelle. Bought in an antique shop in 1970, a woman gave a raggedy doll to her daughter, Donna, who was in nursing school. Now, let me just say, I had my own Raggedy Ann doll growing up, and it always gave me the chills. Now, Donna and her roommate Angie kept coming home to find the doll in different positions and different locations. Then the doll began leaving them notes reading help. A psychic told them that the doll was possessed by the spirit of a girl named Annabelle who had died at the location where their apartment complex had been built. But the girl's friend Lou thought there was something more sinister about Annabelle, and she levitated up his body and strangled him until he passed out. The girls then called Ed and Lorraine Warren, who decided the doll was actually a conduit to hell that a demon was using. 2 exorcisms didn't work, and the Warrens took Annabelle home. Now, upon arriving home, Ed and Lorraine placed the doll in Ed's study, and the doll levitated and moved about the house. Even when placed in the locked office in an outer building, the Warrens claimed that she would turn up later inside the house. Finally, the Warrens decided to lock Annabelle up for good, and they had a specially made glass and wood case constructed, upon which they inscribed the Lord's Prayer and St. Michael's Prayer. Then, for the rest of his life, Ed would periodically say a binding morning prayer over the case, ensuring that the sinister spirit and doll remained good and trapped. Number 9. The Devil Made Me Do It. Ed and Lorraine Warren helped exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks appeared on his neck afterward. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. Now, they did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. Now, during his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Then David's older sister's boyfriend, Arnie, then coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in David's exorcisms. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed, and he would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, after his and his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine informed the Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and that the devil made me do it. Number 8. The Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist was a claim of supernatural activity in Enfield, London between 1977 and 1979. The poltergeist activity centered around two young sisters, Janet and Margaret Hodgson. In August 1977, single-parent Peggy Hodgson called the Metropolitan Police to her rented home, claiming she had witnessed furniture moving and that two of her 4 children heard knocking sounds in the walls. Later claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and children levitating. Over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including the Hodgson's neighbors, paranormal investigators, and journalists, say they variously saw heavy furniture moving on its own accord, objects being thrown across the room, and the sisters seeming to levitate several feet off the ground. Many have also recorded knocking noises and a gruff voice. Now, Ed and Lorraine Warren went to investigate in 1978 and were convinced that the events had a supernatural explanation. It was during this time that the house of the supposed poltergeist started speaking through Janet. The young girl would often go in a trance-like state where she would speak in a deep, scratchy voice, claiming to be the ghost of a man named Bill Wilkins who had died in the house years before. Now, one of the interactions of Janet levitating was actually caught on camera.
Number 7. Michael Taylor. The Michael Taylor case is one of the strangest I've ever come across while doing lists like this, and it certainly needed Ed and Lorraine. The horrifying events of Michael Taylor happened in the 1970s, specifically 1974. A man who was considered a good husband, father, and community man suddenly flipped. He began enduring bouts of severe depression and was visiting a 21-year-old pastor named Marie Robinson for counsel. His wife was obviously suspicious, but the sessions were helping. Mary allegedly performed many exorcisms on him to expel the demons. Taylor's wife was getting pretty antsy, and they ended up having a confrontation during which Taylor attacked his wife. It was after this moment Taylor resolved to undergo a full-blown exorcism on October 5th, 1974. During this, Michael had seizures, he spit and bit the ministers, and screamed in tongues. Unfortunately though, it did not expel all the demons, and Taylor returned home in a rage. He took the life of his wife in an incredibly gruesome way, and was later found screaming in the street, naked and covered in blood. I don't think the Warrens ever encountered anything as violent, but imagine if they did. Number 6. Richard Gallagher and Julia. Richard Gallagher is a man I find entirely fascinating because his transition from being a man of science to a full-on believer of the occult is, for lack of a better word, insane. Now, obviously the Warrens had their domain, but imagine if these guys collaborated on this case? What? Though, I don't know if Gallagher needed the help. Just saying. The case I'm referring to is when Gallagher encountered a transformative possession. Gallagher became the go-to guy to diagnose people who claimed to be possessed. An Ivy League psychiatrist, he would help those who were mistaking mental illness for something mystical. Julia was the first time he encountered someone he couldn't explain. Julia was the queen of a satanic cult and had become possessed, which she desperately wanted to be rid of. Skeptical at first, but when Richard sat down to talk to her, she knew intimate details about his life. Objects would fly off the wall, and once during a phone call with the priest, they both heard one of the demonic voices she'd speak in around them, even though Julia was across the country. Number 5. The Thornton Heath Poltergeist. It was the 1970s. A. Thornton Heath, England. Where were the Warrens? Probably busy, or too scared to bother with such a terrifying case. It all started one hot August evening when the family living in the house was awoken by their radio suddenly blaring to life. This was just the beginning to a terrible haunting the family would endure for 4 years. Objects would fall or be thrown across the room by invisible hands, you know, all the usual poltergeisty things. One night, the son awoke to find a man standing at the end of his bed, like staring at him with like venom in his eyes. After a bunch of startling incidents, they tried to have the house blessed, but it failed. However, a medium did discover that the house was haunted by a couple named the Chattertons who considered them trespassers on their property. The family eventually had no other option but to move out, and the activity has since ceased. But imagine if the Warrens were on the case, probably would have been solved so much sooner, or not, who knows. Number 4, the Danny poltergeist case. In 1998, a woman named Jane Fishman reported strange happenings regarding an antique bed in the home of Al Cobb in Savannah, Georgia. It was a vintage 1800s bed that Cobb bought at auction for his son, a purchase he later regretted. 3 nights after it was purchased, Jason, the son, told his parents that someone was watching him on the bed. He felt cold breath on his neck and saw the impressions of elbows dipping into the pillow. He also noticed the photo of his deceased grandparents lying face down on the dresser, which became a reoccurring event. After he put it back up, it'd fall back out. But then, one morning, an assortment of strange objects, including animals made from shells, was found on his bed after he'd already gone down to breakfast. That got his parents and his twin brother's attention. They left paper and crayons out and asked the ghost what his name was. Then later they came back to see Danny 7 written on the paper. After several communications and a smashed terracotta planter, it was clear that Danny didn't want anyone in his bed. The family eventually got rid of the bed, but that didn't solve the problem. Turns out Jason's connection to the spirits went skin deep, and he continued to see things after the event. Number 3, here we go. The Winchester House. This place is on my bucket list to visit, so it's a wonder to me why the Warrens never checked it out. Again, I googled it, they didn't. Prove me wrong in the comments. I welcome correction, as always. Thank you. But it's essentially a 24,000 square feet mansion with 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors, 160 rooms, 52 skylights, 47 stairways and fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 13 bathrooms, 6 kitchens, and cost Sarah $5 million to build, about $71 million today. There are stairs and doors that lead to nowhere, windows that don't open. It's a labyrinth of mystery. Sarah Winchester and her husband William Winchester amassed a huge fortune from their sale of the, you guessed it, Winchester rifle. After her daughter died of TB and William left Sarah a widow, she consulted a medium who told her that she would constantly be haunted by the spirits killed by the Winchester rifle. The house never stopped construction until she died in 1922. It is said the house was built to trap the spirits inside. Today, it's considered one of the most haunted places in the world and is well worth a visit for anyone seeking a scare. So where the heck were the Warrens to debunk this thing? It would have been awesome. Number 2, the Amityville horror case. Obviously, I had to put this case on the list because this case remained the scariest event of Ed and Lorraine's career.
It had the monstrosities of the night which roamed that house, which infested it, which caused a young man to murder his whole family.
The events at Amityville, Long Island in 1975 shook the nation and the box office. The Lutz family moved into their dream suburban home with optimism and hope for their life. But little did they know, a year earlier, Ronald DeFia Jr. shot and killed all 6 members of his family, priming the property with evil. The Lutzes didn't know what to make of the swarms of flies, loud, aggressive banging noises, disturbing entities, and even levitations occurring in the home. So they got the hell out of Dodge, leaving all their belongings in the process. When they finally called the Warrens in, George Lutz, the father, who was, by the way, an ex-Marine and karate expert, literally supposed to be fearless, wouldn't even meet them at the house. They met at a Pizza Hut. But as soon as the Warrens began working on the case, they understood why.
The Amityville case affected our personal lives more than any case we ever worked on.
To this day, Lorraine says that this is the case that haunts her the most and said that she hoped this was the closest to hell as she would ever get. So if that's not too scary, I don't know what is. And now we are getting to number 1, the Warrens. Demons, poltergeists, and ghosts. It was hard to find a case that the Warrens wouldn't face. They seemed fearless, their love strong enough to withstand all the forces of darkness, or at least that's how the movies told it. It turns out that the real case the Warrens were too afraid of was the horrifying truth of their marriage. Yup, we're going there. If you're a fan of the movie franchise, then you know that Lorraine had a lot of influence on the stories up until her death, but a weird detail in her contact alludes to some nefarious activity in their personal life. Neither Ed or Lorraine Warren could be depicted violating anyone or performing adult acts with a minor. The reason that was in there might have something to do with the case of Judith Penny. Penny stayed with the Warrens as a young woman and allegedly had an inappropriate relationship with Ed, and Lorraine knew about it. Judith made a legal declaration in November 2014 stating that Penny and Ed had begun an amorous relationship when he was her bus driver and she moved in with them in 1963. That same year, Penny was arrested when someone noticed the illegal relationship between her and Ed. Why she was arrested and not him remains in question to me, but Penny also stated that Ed was abusive towards Lorraine, saying, and I quote, "Sometimes Ed would actually have to slap her across the face to shut her up. Some nights I thought they were going to kill each other." Lorraine denied the allegations through representatives, and there are still a lot of loose ends, but I suppose whatever happened has already been taken to the grave.
At number 10 is the Buddhist exorcism. Ed and Lorraine Warren didn't limit themselves to American spooks. They wanted to explore all kinds of ghosts and demons from around the world. Think about it, there are so many regional monsters waiting to be discovered. It's not just about battling your everyday demons. See, they took on the Oni and Yoaki. So they jetted off to Japan to investigate these eerie tunnels where people met their end. Ed, who knew Japan from his Navy days during WW2, was keen to dive into their culture and mysteries, but it was no vacation. They were called to help Teresa, a young woman plagued by multiple demons. Buddhist exorcism was the name of the game here, a stark contrast to their usual Catholic connection. In the footage, Lorraine's trying her best to cast out the evil. It's not easy to watch someone in such torment, but the experts were on hand. Ed and Lorraine had high praise for the Buddhist team, saying that they were cut from a different cloth. At number 9 is the Satanic Idol. Ed and Lorraine Warren had their share of spooky encounters, and here's one you might not have heard of because the Warrens aren't too keen on bringing it up. A satanic idol and a human skull, both found in their collection. Imagine owning something like that. The skull was given to them as a gift, and while it's a bizarre present, it fits their unusual line of work. Now let's talk about the idol. It's an eerie, tall, slender thing, and even though it doesn't scream Satan at first glance, it gives off some seriously creepy vibes. A local hunter stumbled upon it in the woods along with the skull, and that's where the story takes a mysterious twist. See, the hunter claims he was later approached by a man in black and urged him to leave that stuff behind. Spooked and not knowing what to do, he took it to the Warrens, who must have thought it was a great addition to their collection. However, things took a dark turn. See, Lorraine fell seriously ill after they brought the idol home, and Ed believed it was linked to their new acquisition. She eventually recovered, but the details of how they purified or cleansed the idol remain a mystery. It's now part of their haunted relics collection, waiting for Hollywood to come knocking. Maybe it'll star in a horror movie soon. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. It's free! Clara Germana cell possession, or Clara Germana Kell possession. I'm gonna let the... Imagine being a perfectly ordinary teenager and suddenly you're speaking languages you've never even heard before, exhibiting superhuman strength, and reacting violently to religious symbols. It's like something straight out of a horror movie. But this was no horror movie, it was the real-life ordeal. In 1996, this South American girl had the whole town spooked. She was sent to a Roman Catholic mission school, and that's when all the weirdness began. Clara began speaking language she had no business knowing, like Polish, German, and French. It's her father, Erasmus Horner, the local Catholic priest, who must have had nerves of steel. He came to investigate, and after witnessing Clara's terrifying behavior, he was convinced that she was under the influence of something truly malevolent. The priest and his team embarked on a series of exorcisms, battling whatever had taken a hold of Clara. It's a story that'll send shivers down your spine and make you think twice about what might be lurking in the shadows. In the shadow.
Coming into number 7, we have the Borley Rectory. According to demonologists, ghost hunters, and psychics like Ed and Lorraine, the Borley Rectory is the most haunted place in the United Kingdom. The building was constructed in Victorian times in Essex, and rumours of its hauntings were rife from the very beginning. Ghost hunters claimed the activity is related to a Benedictine monastery built in the area in 1362. A monk was said to have been executed, and a nun bricked alive in the walls of a convent after the pair had an affair. Obviously, good old Ed and Lorraine had to go for a jaunt to check it out. When talking about their first experience at the property, Lorraine said that she was with a skeptical newspaper reporter. She shares an experience of what happened to him.
Something is hitting me. It's hitting me. It's hitting me. And he was absolutely hysterical.
Ugh, a hitting ghost, not what you need. Then she continued by saying,
He said, I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Later, Lorraine said that a recording taken at the church at this moment revealed a woman's voice saying,
Hit him, almost
Really?
in a healing way. And you hear her very gentle voice.
Chilling. Was the monk hitting him because the nun wanted him to? Coming into number 6, we have The Witch of Harrisville. Some of you guys may have seen The Conjuring. Well, that horrifying movie is based on a house that the Warrens investigated in Rhode Island. Now, this house was haunted by a witch called Bathsheba Sherman. She is said to have cursed the land so that whoever lived on it in the future would die. What a babe. One of the Perrin family members, Andrea, discusses her time in the house. In this clip, she's talking about her sister.
And the door opened to the pantry, and April looked up at my mother and she said, Mommy, something really bad happened in there. Indeed. It's where little Prudence Arnold had her throat cut.
Ed and Lorraine visited the home and exorcised the witch. Or did they? When members from the Ed and Lorraine Warren Museum visited Bathsheba's grave, this is what they heard.
Don't be scared.
Kill? Who are you gonna kill?
Coming into number 5, we have the Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist was a case investigated by Ed and Lorraine in 1977. The pair travelled to England to investigate the rumoured haunted home in North London. They deduced the mysterious goings-on were a result of demonic possession. The residents recorded sounds that took place in a bedroom after their children had gone to bed. Now bear in mind, in the 70s, not a lot of people had video recording equipment or even audio recording equipment.
All the lights gone out. Oh. Where's the light?
It's right the lamp.
On the head.
Right where across the room. And pulled it out of the socket.
So we hear screaming and confusion as the lights go out. It seems as if a lamp was pulled out of the socket. Then this happens.
Who's that shaking the door? Oh. What's something? Mum's laugh. Where is it? Oh!
It seems a slipper was used as a projectile by some kind of ghoul and thrown across the room. Over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including neighbours, fellow psychic researchers and journalists, said that they saw furniture moving of its own accord and objects being thrown across the room. It was even said that one of the children in the house levitated. Spooky. The events that took place in this Enfield house make up the inspiration behind The Conjuring 2. Coming into number 4, very famous, we have Amityville. In a 2013 interview, Lorraine Warren said that this case haunted her the most. She said, I will never go in the Amityville house again. What happened in this house that made a self-confessed expert demonologist scared to return? The story goes that in 1974, 23-year-old Ronald J. Defoe Jr. murdered his entire family when they slept at their home in Amityville. He killed 6 people. Now these were said to be his 4 siblings and his parents. He said he heard voices that told him to do it. After a year, the house was eventually purchased for just $80,000, although the buyers, the Lutz family, stayed just 28 days because of the horror they experienced. George and Kathy Lutz said that they saw slime coming out of the walls, knives being thrown from counters, figures wandering and wailing. George even said that he saw his wife levitating and an evil red-eyed pig-like creature glaring at him. Ed and Lorraine were brought in along with a priest to rid the house of spirits. In an interview, Ed said,
When we went into the house that day, we didn't realize that it was diabolically infested. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I would have to say that Amityville was a 10.
Oh my god. The pair believed that it was the house that cursed the murderer rather than the murderer that cursed the house. Today, there have been 18 different films about the home. Okay, because Amityville was so scary it gets 2 points of its very own. We have the Ghost Boy at number 3. This picture was taken by Ed Warren as he investigated the Amityville house. The picture shows what appears to be a demonic boy. The Warrens suspected it could be one of the youngest children with his eyes glowing from the infrared film. The Warrens believe that this is one of the most credible pieces of evidence for ghosts ever caught on camera. Honestly, it gives me chills to look at this picture. Coming into number 2, we have the very famous Annabelle doll. So many of you will know the horrifying story of Annabelle, a possessed real doll behind the Annabelle and Conjuring franchise. Ed and Lorraine were called upon by 2 young women to deal with an out-of-control Raggedy Ann doll. The doll then became infamous for being demonically possessed, perpetuating the trope for the demon dolly. Annabelle lives in a locked case in the Warrens Occult Museum. Now there isn't any video evidence of the doll being a menace, but things did get pretty scary recently when the doll was moved in a Facebook Live video. On hand at the Warrens Museum were Dan Rivera and Tony Sepra, who were handling the move. Dan says this about Annabelle.
The most diabolical, most haunted, most evil item in the occult museum.
And he is also charged with moving the doll. Tony explains how Dan has made it safe to move Annabelle here.
As long as your skin is not going to be in contact with the aura of that doll, which is touching the surface of the doll with your human hands. You don't want to do that.
Before the doll is moved, the pair pray.
Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the malice and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who wander through the world for the ruin of souls. Amen.
Okay, watch as they move the doll now, it's really tense.
Okay, quickly. Right over here. Go into the new case.
They then pray again, and also tell a story about a guy who provoked Annabelle by tapping on her case. According to the duo, the man died that evening in a bike accident. Okay, finally, arguably one of the most haunted places in the world, a truly terrifying place. I'm not sure I'd even ever set foot in it. We have the Occult Museum. So this is one of the scariest things that Ed and Lorraine ever experienced together. This was the creation of their Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. This is what Lorraine said about the place when she was leading a tour of her home.
You're in probably one of the most haunted places in the world because of the things that are in here. Everything in here has been taken from some place where people are either killed or maimed or so many ways. So it's tragic for me.
So basically it's the culmination of all of their scary cases in one. In the museum you can find Annabelle, no thanks, and the Conjuring mirror, and way more. She says you should never ever touch anything in the museum. Now despite living with Annabelle in the museum, this is Lorraine's reaction when she walks by her.
This is the worst thing in here, is that doll. I'm not gonna stare at it though. So you can take the picture, but I'm not going to stare at it because that has done bad harm on a lot of people.
A priest circulates the museum daily to bless the space.
Father, and of the Son, of the Holy Spirit, amen.
What has been done is circular embolism, which is prayers, are said all the time. You know, to pray.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Coming in at number 10, we have the Connecticut poltergeist. I found a video clip of Ed and Lorraine investigating the haunting of a Connecticut home. This haunting was later the basis for the movie The Haunting in Connecticut, because they were being haunted in Connecticut. It makes so much sense. Ed Warren says that this is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for poltergeist activity caught on camera. The family were being plagued by ghostly activity and wanted help, so they called demonologists. It seems in the footage Ed is holding a seance to contact a spirit. This is what happens when he asks who's there.
1 knock for yes, 2 for no. Are you a man? Are you a boy?
Then this is what happens when asked if the young spirit wants the family to leave.
You want the people in this house to move. 1 knock for yes, 2 for no.
Yes.
The Warrens also recorded this footage of the poltergeist moving chairs.
Give me some sign.
Later, the poltergeist is shown trying to pull a chair out from under a child. Years later, Lorraine was interviewed about the house and she said the spirits were cleared with an exorcism. She also said this.
There was a very old tree that was right in front of this house. There was no wind at all, no wind whatsoever, and the tree broke in half.
Coming into number 9, we have the White Lady of Union Cemetery. Ed and Lorraine have investigated many cases and usually have been the duo behind the case's fame. The White Lady of Union Cemetery long since outdates and surpasses the Warrens. Nonetheless, the pair did have a scary moment there and even caught a ghost on camera. The cemetery is in eastern Connecticut and the site dates back to the 1700s. The graveyard is said to be haunted by a plethora of ghosts, the White Lady being just one of them. Ed stayed in the graveyard for 7 nights and saw ghost lights filling up the place. He said on September the 1st, 1990, he experienced something particularly scary. He said he heard a woman weeping. He said shadow ghosts tried to stop the woman getting to him, and this was the photo he took. This is what he had to say.
Your stereotype ghost right here.
Isn't that beautiful?
The electromagnetic energy taken from the plant life in the cemetery is used by the spirit to form this image.
Coming into number 8, we have the devil. Ed and Lorraine Warren met the devil and they testified to it. This all went down in 1981 when they were called into a murder trial. Arnie Cheyenne Johnson claimed to have killed his landlord because the devil made him do it. It all started with a possessed 11-year-old David Glatzel. This is where Ed and Lorraine first stepped into the picture. The pair were called in to try and rid the boy of the demon along with Catholic priests. Over several days, the group did eventually get rid of the demon. However, according to them, the demon fled into his brother 18-year-old Arnie's body. Oof. A few months later, he killed his landlord in an argument. His defense lawyer argued that he was possessed. Now here is a clip of Ed talking about Arnie.
And he screamed at these devils, take me on. Leave my little buddy alone. He got his wish.
He challenged the demonic.
He challenged the demonic.
Then he says this about when he became possessed.
And Arnie disappeared for a few minutes. When he came back, he was somebody entirely different.
Ed and Lorraine spoke at his trial and attested to the fact that he was indeed possessed by the devil. Thus ensued a media blitz around the case. The pair then wrote a book called The Devil in Connecticut following the incident. Arnie Cheyenne Johnson served just 5 years in jail.
Coming in at number 7, we have The Watcher. On August 6th of 2019, a 35-year-old woman named Lacey Turner went outside to water her plants. While doing so, a strange noise woke up her boyfriend Joe, so he decided to check out the house's cameras to see what was going on outside. That's when he spotted a dark entity following Lacey as she watered the flowers. As Lacey walks away to her other plants, the shadow figure follows. Lacey was completely unaware of this. As she heads back inside, the shadow figure follows her. Both Lacey and Joe believe that this ghost was Joe's grandma, who died 5 months earlier due to a fire on the property. Coming in at number 6, we have Paranormal Nights. So this next story was told by a man named Greg Pollitt. Greg is the co-founder of a paranormal investigation team called Paranormal Nights. In 2012, he visited a client's home, since they said paranormal activity had been occurring there. The owner would see shadowy apparitions, or objects in the house would move on their own. They were taking photos of the house and later discovered that they had captured an entity in the photo. That literally looks like a ghost woman with a sinister smile. Apparently, Greg said that this spirit was malicious. So there you go. I hope Greg got the hell out of there. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the black-eyed children. Black-eyed children is a pretty famous legend about evil children with pure black eyes. These kids can be anywhere from 6 to 16 years old, and they target adults who are alone. They will typically ask for favors, such as asking to get a ride home with them, or asking for food, or to use the bathroom in their house. But if you give them what they want, chances are they're gonna kill you. Well, one motorcyclist claims to have seen one of these children, and it was captured on video. In the video, you can see the ghost girl appear and then disappear in front of him. Then she appears again and he runs away. Okay, my question is, why didn't he hop back on his bike and zoom the heck out of there? Anyway, that must have been a pretty terrifying encounter. In our 4th spot, we have the witchcraft. I honestly had no clue what to title this point. Like, is it witchcraft? Does this kid have supernatural powers or what? You'll understand in a second. So this video was uploaded by a user named JevGenge2000 on March 2nd, 2009. According to the uploader, he was walking his dog in a forest in Russia when he saw a kid just levitating in midair. There's a woman with her just watching as she does this. Then his dog barks and they realize they're not alone, and so they run off.
Я сказал, ко мне! Тарзан, ко мне! Что это? Тихо, тихо, Тарзан. Тарзан, тихо, Тарзан.
To this day, no one has been able to explain this video. Some say the girl had wires attached to her, but it honestly doesn't seem like that's the case. Pretty sure one of them has superpowers or something. Coming in at number 3, we have the Pearl Harbor ghosts. This next photo was taken at a school's sporting event. Nothing seemed too out of the ordinary until closer inspection of the photo. In the background, on the bleachers, you can clearly see 3 ghostly looking soldiers. Well, guess what? The school is located in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Those men may be soldiers that lost their lives during the Pearl Harbor attacks. Moving on to number 2, we have the Ghost Adventures. So this next moment was captured from the show Ghost Adventures. Ghost hunters Zach and Billy were exploring a creepy haunted place when a ghost or something latched onto Zach. He said he could feel something all over his body and it felt cold. At one point, he became completely paralyzed by this entity.
I can't move. What do you want me to do? No, touch my arms, Billy. I got you. I got you, bro. Something's happening to me, trying to affect you. Okay, hold on a second. Having a panic attack. Okay, don't have a panic attack.
I mean, I personally would love to go ghost hunting, but at the same time, I'm terrified in case something like that happens to me. And in our number 1 spot, we have the face in the back. This next story literally sent chills down my spine. So the story was shared by a woman named Lori McGee from Ohio. She claims that her 3-year-old son was trying to take pictures of her, but he didn't realize the camera was backwards. So he ended up taking a photo of himself instead. Basically, this kid invented the selfie. Now, when this photo was developed, Lori was scared out of her mind. There appears to be a ghostly man standing right behind her son. She has no clue who this man is, and they were home alone when this all happened. Now this photo gives me the creeps. Like, he does not look like a good ghost. He's got some bad intentions.